Thank you everybody for signing up today. This is made possible thanks to Code Magic. Thank you, Marie and Martin, both in the chat. We are excited about taking on this subject as Flutter as a service, and I thought, like, who better to do it with than Frederick? So this is going to be quite fun. It's going to be pretty interesting to say the least. We have some really exciting topics planned. So just like a general overview of what we're going to be doing today and going over, we have, we're going to talk about our backgrounds first to kind of give some credibility for those that doubt. And then we're going to start with Frederick's talk. We'll have a short Q&A after that. And then we'll jump into my talk. We'll have another Q&A. And then for those that are around, we'll have some drawing and prizes for those that are asking good questions. So both me and Frederick have some special stuff to give away. I will be giving out some promo codes of the Widget Studio for both Android, iOS, and macOS. And I think, Frederick, don't you have some stuff too?
Yeah, I will have. I will also send out. Basically, I think Marie will send out some emails after this event to everyone who attended, and they will also contain some kind of promo codes and other maybe smaller gifts. So yeah, stay tuned. It's kind of a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's probably good for everyone who's attending live and not watching the lazy recording, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So Frederick, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks also from my side, and thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Frederick. I've been an Android developer for, I don't know, like six years or something. Like while I was attending high school, I got into mobile development, and then had my first job also developing Android apps. Basically, after I finished university, I was employed for exactly half a year or something. And then I realized I become a Flutter freelancer, and probably was one of the first in Germany or in the European area with that. Yeah, and then since then I just was self-employed and basically building Flutter apps. Yeah,
That's awesome.
Really enjoy it.
So so what? I guess we can just go ahead and jump into it. But so, like, what are you going to be talking about? And then whenever you're ready, you can definitely go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and give you controls as well.
Okay, yeah, maybe we just have like a short, like how do you say it, overview of today's evening. Yeah. I think the topic that I'm going to cover is building products your users actually want. I think that's kind of a broad topic. It could mean everything and nothing at the same time. And for those who've been around for some time, maybe you follow the discussion I had with Rody. And it's more covering all the whole area of building side projects, maybe profitable side projects, and maybe turning them later into your own business and having something like solo founded or founded with two people, like an indie business or something. I think this is like the bigger picture for today. So yeah, that's my kind of talk, and I just try to explain a little bit, just give you some hints. I mean, I also just started out. I've been on a few smaller projects myself, like also side projects and smaller startups, which then at some point failed. Some were successful, but it's like small things. And I just try to put in some insights that I've gained. And also, please don't take them that serious, because it's just like my own, based on my own experience. I think everyone has to make their own, but if you can get something out of it, that would be great, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe Rody, you want to already say something? What you're going to talk about? Or
I'll give a quick snippet, and then because it's going to be related to yours, but then you can go ahead and start yours. Just so, so what I'm going to be talking about in mine is basically a follow-up to kind of Flutter as a service in general. Whereas yours is a case study. I want to be able to like mirror a lot of that kind of stuff. I want to show like examples on how you can take an idea or a future idea and be able to monetize it and create money in the future. I want to show everyone that like how many options are possible and some things that you may not think about when creating applications. And like, if you're someone who is a UI designer, for example, like, oh, you can make money too. And I can show you ways that you, no matter your skill set, where you can find your niche and fit right in. So but I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Wiredash.
Nice. Okay. Then I would say I would just, there's just a notification that popped up that some people are in the waiting room. I just
Yeah,
want to,
you should see admit. Only one person can be the host, so let's see.
okay, should I admit all of them? There are three actually
Yeah,
now.
you can click admit all. It mutes by default. So
So I will have to do this. I will manage this as well, right?
yeah,
Okay.
until you share with me again. But yeah.
Oh, okay. Because there's like a lot of people that, like joining right now.
Oh, nice.
Okay. So welcome everyone.
Cool.
Okay, let me just share my screen and see where
And
this goes.
and make sure to check the chat too, because you can show a portion of it too.
Okay. Yeah, because currently I think I'm just sharing my
Yeah, no worries.
right?
You got it.
Okay. So everyone should just see the big slide right now. Right? Thumbs up. Do you
Yep,
see it?
be good.
Good, nice, cool. Yeah, as I already said, my talk for today is called "Building Products Your Users Actually Want," or yeah, what I learned while building Wire-IO. For those who don't know what Wire-IO currently is, it's like a feedback tool for Flutter apps, an interactive feedback tool for Flutter apps, where your users can give in-app feedback without leaving the app, and basically it just captures your screen, has like a very, yeah, not very, but like kind of fancy UI to it. So it's hopefully it's fun for the user as well to engage with the developers or with the team behind the app, and then give you productive feedback on how to improve the app. So that's what Wiredish is. But first of all, I want to again emphasize, this is my disclaimer, everything I'm telling you right now, if you follow this advice and whatever your host catches fire or something, it's not my responsibility. It's just like for entertainment purposes and for you to maybe, get some more insights from someone who did something similar, right? Okay, so you're probably here because you're interested in starting a business or starting a side project in the Flutter space, right? So everything here usually starts with an idea, like every business idea, whatever. However, I don't really like the word idea here because it doesn't really resonate with me. I always have to think about those big Silicon Valley kind of startups which have like a lot of money and funding as well. And that's actually what I don't want to target in this talk. It's especially like target for developers or solopreneurs, people who just want to get out there idea. Because there was also, when I was attending university, there were, and I was younger, I had like also an Android sticker on my laptop. As I said, I was an Android developer back then. And then also two students approached me, two business economics students, and said like, yeah, we have like the biggest idea, right? And we want to share with you. And that's always like this kind of idea that will change the world. And they said you have to sign an NDA and stuff in order to know the idea. And said, okay, you know, as unexperienced as I was, it's like, yeah, I'm signing the NDA. Just let me know what it is. And they're like, we're going to build a couponing app. And as you might know, couponing apps, they were like a huge deal. Back then, Groupon was huge. And they were already there at the market like for years, right? And Google offered them, I think, a few billion to actually get the whole product, and they declined. And know those guys, they just thought they can copy the idea. And in the end, I should just get like 10% of shares for basically building the whole tech stack and building their app, right? Which was not a good offer. So what I'd like you to do here is not think of an idea, but think of kind of a pain point, right? A pain point that you, as a developer, or maybe even an entrepreneur, or as someone in everyday life experiences. Yeah, because if you are having this kind of problem, at least one person, yeah, actually has this problem, then that's already a huge plus, because then you're kind of solving a real world problem. So that's also already a check mark there. Also, the probability of others having the same problem then is kind of high, because there are a lot of Flutter developers around here, and basically everyone probably in this meeting. And if you have a specific problem regarding Flutter, it's very likely that if you share it with others, they would really appreciate it, or maybe even pay money for it if you would save them some time, right? And since Flutter is kind of niche as well, yeah, there's still a big, piece of the cake untouched. And so that's why we're actually having this webinar right now. And I think Rody will also elaborate on that further. So I want to make a short digression here and talk to you about how to make 1 million. This is not like some kind of unserious. I want to make you all CFD traders and let's join the WhatsApp group. No, it's not. It's just like showing you actually what you would need to do in order to make 1 million revenue in a year. So it's basically 5,000 people buying a $200 product, 1,000 people a 1K product, and so on, right? So basically, you would just need 10 people paying you 20K, and you would have like a 1 million, 50 people paying you 20K, and you would have $1 million dollar revenue, right? The thing is, we're talking about software here, and usually in the software as a service space, it's quite usual to sell something like subscriptions. So if we turn the page around and have a look at subscription prices, it would just take 5,000 people who subscribe for $17 a month to actually make 1 million revenue. I mean, take those, please go on and take these numbers with a great grain of salt here, because there's like all happy day cases, right? We're thinking about those people being subscribed for a year, right? In order to hit this 1 million, and then you have to probably also pay taxes and stuff. So the whole million idea is kind of just to change your mindset, right? Or to align your mindset. And yeah, in the end, you could also just have, let's say 500 people paying $170 per month to also make this million, or 10 people, 8K, whatever. And that's actually not too far away from B2B prices, right? If you actually delivering a high quality service, that's very niche for a company that saves a lot of money while they're using your service. Or in the end, you can also just have one person buying your startup. So Martin, if you're in this call and you're listening to this, please make sure to stay in this call so we can discuss the details of acquiring Wiredash. But whatever. Also, a very interesting fact here is that there are 2 million active Flutter developers right now, probably even more at this very moment, and that would mean you only need 0.0025% who would actually subscribe to your product again for a year, right, to make this 1 million. And even if you would say double this number and say that's 0.05%, it's still not a very high number, right? So coming back to the pain point I was talking about, was I usually build something that my users don't want. I don't know about you, but I'm a developer. I like playing around with new kind of tech stuff. So, when I finished uni, I just built things that I enjoyed, building, which usually no one else would, pay any cent for, like whatever, a music control level lamp app or something. Or I once built an app which you could stick onto the night lamp, my sister's night lamp, and if she would go to sleep, like a mosquito sound would start to play. And if she would like turn on the lights to search for the mosquito, it would just stop, right? I mean, those are things that are fun, but usually if you have this kind of market group, if you market for, let's say, underaged people, like, buying this mosquito noise or sound app, usually they also don't have that much money to pay for your app. So you want to target other developers, or especially in the B2B market in which we are right now. So the idea behind I'm building something that my users don't really want was a user feedback tool that doesn't suck. So that was the idea I came up for myself. So yeah, I just went out and basically built the prototype for it. And on the 25th of October 2009, you can see the tweet here. And I just put it out. I just want to check how is the resonance and would people like it or not. And I actually got a really positive feedback and from the community. As you can see, it's like nearly 400 likes and 100 retweets. And even Tim Smith from Flutter, from the PM for Flutter at Google, right? He replied to it and said that he's loving it. So, I mean, what kind of verification can you get, like, if it's not the product manager of the product itself saying that it's actually quite good? So yeah, I think I found my niche, and I also verified the idea, and I got in touch with the community. So that was actually pretty great, and I got kind of excited, a little bit overexcited. So I started building the first MVP. I don't know if everyone knows what an MVP is. It stands usually for minimum viable product. And that's a product that just offers enough features that people would actually start using it, right? And that you can try out the idea behind it, and that it just works, that it barely works. There's no like fancy features around it, maybe not even a sophisticated design, right? So yeah, I went out and started building it. I came up with this. I don't know if some people still remember it. It was called Snapfeed. It wasn't even called Wiredash back then. And as you can see, I was kind of super euphoric because, as you can see, everyone wanted to implement it in thousands of the projects. So you had this beautiful project chooser, because you would have thousands of apps, obviously. And yeah, this was basically the detailed view of the whole product. So if someone sent a feedback, it would come into this list, and then you could see the date. You can set the status, if it was new, planned, in progress, close it. It was basically like an own planning solution, right? Internal tool for this customer management, right? And back then I actually put out a landing page, what you always read on the internet, and I collected email addresses. And I actually had quite a lot of email addresses, but actual users of this app have been like 15 to 20 only, 15 to 20 users. And of those 50 to 20 users, no one really needed the status. No one needed like the sorting functionality. No one used the owner, which you could assign, so you could even invite people to your project, but no one would use it. So all this stuff was actually not really used by those people. But this doesn't stop here. I got so excited building my MVP that I even added this beautiful settings screen with all the integrations. You could even like choose a branding, upload a logo, and change the font remotely, obviously, right? So you didn't have to do it on the client side. You could change it remotely. And I even added integrations, email, Slack, and for sure Task Magic, right? Coming soon. And Zapier. So not many people were actually using Slack back then, although this is like a quite often requested feature. And only one person used Zapier, and that was me in my example project in order to set up the Zapier API. So yeah, that was me being done building the MVP, which I call the maximum viable product, because it was basically a full-blown product already and not something very simple that I could just test and throw into the market, right? So please, if I learned something, don't build a maximum viable product, and also don't spend more than a month on it, on this initial phase, right? And also, please go ahead and talk to your users. That's actually a very, very important thing, which I will also elaborate later on in this talk. The next step for me in this in the whole journey was actually to rebuild the whole MVP with all the feedback I got from the community. Again, here, sometimes my developer kind of OCD kicks in, and I just have to rewrite the code. I think we all know that. So you write some code, and it's actually not as great as you thought, like half a year later. Right? I'm one of those guys to whom this applies. Yeah, please don't do that. Don't ever rewrite your whole project after you got a product which actually works. So, however, the good thing about Snapfeed was that I was building the whole Snapfeed SDK in the public. So as you can see, that it was public and open source project on GitHub. And you can see like some open issues, some closed issues. There are not that many because it wasn't actually used by so many people. But as you can see, there are already like a lot of interesting features, right? There was a question how to handle localization as an example. Someone wanted custom strings. Someone wanted to support like more theming or more customization options. So all of those feature requests, they had nothing to do with the front end that I was building, right? So even continuing that, having a different channel, this is basically my email, my inbox for Wiredash, and it's only a few of the things that reach me over a few different channels. And as you can see here, people are super eager to actually give you feedback if you build something that would make their life easier. So if you've come up with a problem that you think is a good idea to be solved, then just go out and try it out, and people will reach out to you, and they will come up with cool ideas you would never thought of that you wanted to integrate into the whole platform, right? So I came and I took all those ideas, and which I collected over all the different the different platforms and channels, and then I put them onto a Trello board, and I came up with some smaller ideas and put some ideas in the backlog and stuff like that. That the usual way you do when you're doing like your startup thing, right? So I collected them here, and then I started working on them. So what I learned from this phase was actually it's super important, always get in touch with the users, and then try to only build requested features or features that are requested by someone from the community. Also, which a thing that I learned, I think a very important and essential part is ask for help and also help others. So that's one of the most important things you can do if you start building your own business, is get in touch with your community as early as possible. Try to really solve someone's problem, because then it's not your problem, because it's the problem of two people already, and this is how it grows organically, and you want to get this insight as well, right? And then again, please don't rewrite your entire code base. So in the end, Wiredish was born, and as some of you may know, this is how it currently looks. This is the website, how it looks today, and this is a picture of the current console. And the interesting thing about the console here is that it looks completely different than the console on Snapfeed. And that's actually because I just built the features the community requested of me, right? Because if you can see this here, this is like a GitHub kind of search. I would have never built this if no one asked me to, right? So I built this because it was an issue on GitHub, actually. And then someone asked for having labels to organize the stuff, because labels are way more sophisticated than just having those predefined statuses, right, that you can set, but nobody used because people want to search their own, or create their own workflow, and they don't want to adapt your workflow. And then there's a close button where you can just close feedback if it's done, so it's not shown on the initial page load. And then you have an options button where you can actually delete stuff. There was also a request I got from a small startup in Europe. And because in order to be compliant with GDPR, they also hinted me and said, okay, we have to be able to actually delete feedback. And even if you're not from Europe, or if you're from like US or Africa or wherever, you don't have to deal with GDPR as a first-class citizen, right? You get this feedback and you want to support it. And that's what your users actually tell you. And even going on integrations and members, if you have a quick look at the new member section, that's also something that completely changed, although you didn't see the old member section of Snapfeed. But this is something that changed because people wanted to have different roles, like administrators, editors, viewers. I just built it because people asked me to. And then also the possibility to edit or remove members with those kind of rules. Also the feature that you can remove yourself. Also having something like pending invites, that you can revoke invites that you accidentally sent to the wrong email, stuff like that. You can do now, and that's just like because someone requested this feature. So again, to round up, start small and let your users guide you. Always get to know your users, and please keep iterating and ship features. This is also something that I learned the hard way, because people always say you have to ship, you have to ship, you have to ship. It sounds so silly, but it's actually true. Because also what I learned about entrepreneurship the hard way is, everyone talks about it in an exciting way. If you see Elon Musk like launching SpaceX rockets, to Mars or whatever, right? All that kind of stuff, it looks so exciting, but is actually not that exciting in everyday life. It's still like a tough job to do it. It's a decision you have to do every day. And that's why I ask you to just keep iterating on small features so you can ship something, because then you get feedback from users again, and that motivates you a lot. When I built the feature, like the GitHub search feature, and then the labels, I did this like in one thing, right? In one flow. The problem there was, while doing this big search and doing this kind of like complicated or big feature labels, I had to deal with so many things that it took me like 3 or 4 weeks or something nearly, until I basically shipped a new feature, until I get new feedback from my customers regarding those features. And it's also like kind of demotivating if you don't get updates, or if you don't share stuff, or if you don't have any visible progress. So please go on and ship small features, and then ask the users what do they think, if you can improve on the stuff. The next thing I would want to shortly talk about is actually doing things that don't scale. And I think I've stolen that from a lot of other people who are already like building startups and so on. just my experience here, it's super important or valuable if you do things like sending out stickers to people. Rody, look, it's a love letter that is on the way currently to the USA, right? And just send out stickers, start with something like that. Say thank you to those people that actually supported you. Try to get in contact with them, right? And for that, I'm just saying, put yourself out there. Go on Twitter. It's a huge community. It's a nice community. You can learn so much from so many talented people. Like I can learn from Rody. Like I can learn from, I don't know, like a lot of talented people out there. They're way more talented in a lot of areas than I am. And if you just go out there and talk to them and ask them what you can do better, they most likely will help you if you're asked in a nice way. Then for sure, print stickers and send letters, right? I mean, you can discuss that kind of thing, but also very important is, building relationships that you're actively taking part in what we do right now, like webinars, asking people for help, maybe even writing long emails. There was one client or even two clients, I wrote like 2 or 3 DNA 4-page long emails back and forth, and they were so excited about the product because the clients were loving it so much. And this is actually what you want. You want to be in touch with your first 10 users and do everything what they want. Because if you do that, if you solve those 10 problems, you're solving probably a lot of problems more. Like many more people will likely use your product. And then there's one thing I just wanted to mention on the side, like before I wrap up the whole thing, is also go on and automate. And what we discussed before I actually started this talk, there's so many already tools out there, like CodeMagic as a CI, right? It can make your life so much easier. It's already been there. You don't have to prove yourself, especially if you start your solo business, that you can build your own CI pipeline. Why would you? It just takes your time. If there's like a tool for automating, I don't know, like getting user feedback, right? Then maybe use that one. Because in the end, it's just like you just trade your time or in the end, your money for a product. And if you think about, if I would build a feature or something or a service that would actually help me, like a customer relations tool or a CI tool or something. And if you think about how much work you can get done on your own product or on your own project, if you think about how much it would cost you, like let's say 50 euros or $100 a month. And if this feature would take you 10 hours to implement, then probably those 10 hours or like even 20 hours or something, right? You could use this time. Your time is probably more valuable than those 100 or 50 bucks, right, a month. So if you're like thinking that way, it most of the time makes sense to, especially in the early stage, use cloud providers, use third-party services, and just get your thing out there. And that's, basically it already. That was my short like intro on what I can tell you. If you have any questions or specific questions, feel free to ask now, right? I would have to check actually and arrange the whole chat thing here. There's a lot of questions, right? But yeah, that was it for now from my side. And I think I'm going to switch it over back to Rody, so you can maybe handle people who want to join, and I'll just start answering questions if there are any. Sounds good? Okay, cool. So let me check how can I make you actually the host again, Rody? I think you should be the host now.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, that was a really exciting take on Wiredash. Like I've been following, like the Snapseed and stuff like that. It's been interesting to see it like evolve and kind of like grow into like you're finding your audience, you're reacting, you're evolving, and it's just like that cycle. You keep cycling it up, because like you're never going to be like in a perfect state. You're not going to have ever arrived with Wiredash. And so I think it's really cool to see the journey, and also like a tangible journey for people to see. Like it's not so like cut and dry. It's not like, okay, if I do this and this, then I'm going to have perfect product, and then just now I get money from here on out. It's like it's all about the vision and the passion that takes, as an entrepreneur for also like, supporting an application and releasing it. So we had some pretty interesting questions in the chat. So first of all, what is your take on like Flutter Web? Like, how do you feel as if for maybe either using it as a, something for this product or just in general Flutter Web for applications? Because I think originally it wasn't Snapseed like Vue.
Yeah. Actually, Snapfeed was built in Vue, and also the current console is built in Vue, to be honest. Just because of the reason that when I actually tried it out a month or 2 or 3 months ago, you have to think about that, right? When I actually started implementing the stuff, Flutter Web still had some kind of issues with actually, selecting text and all that kind of stuff. From what I thought is kind of interesting, if you just want to copy the contents of a feedback or share stuff or copy an ID, because I don't know if you know, you can also send user IDs or emails and stuff, right? Or attach some info to Wiredash, and then you can basically assign this or see what kind of user basically is sent what kind of feedback. And to make this just better handleable, right? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
In a better way. I decided to actually go with Vue also because there's like a lot of images for sure, and the image performance was not that great when I actually tried it out, right? I mean, it gets better and better,
Which has
and
changed
also
a lot, but yeah.
I mean, maybe if I would start now, maybe I would do it in Flutter Web, but I'm not sure.
You're only targeting web though. That's the thing. Is like I feel like if you're targeting multiple platforms, across platform first, that's a way different question than if you're only building web application and functions as a service and everything
That's a
that goes
good
around
point.
there.
That's a good point. But don't underestimate that the fact that actually the SDK is written in Dart, right? So you could basically reuse
Yeah.
stuff, right? So it would make some sense for sure, but also the fact that the navigator is not that great yet, right? With sending and sharing links, right? With this hashtag and so on. And since you can basically invite people as well, I mean, there are workarounds, so you can make your basically web service accepting the URL and then doing a redirect and stuff like that, so you can hack it. But I thought for a sophisticated platform, it was good to go with for now. And there are also like great CSS frameworks out there that are supporting you delivering a good UI, especially for dashboards and stuff, right?
Of course, yeah, and that's the thing is you're leveraging what's available, which is kind of a maybe a predecessor to what we're going to be talking about later, or foreshadowing. But it's like this is where the developers can step in. Flutter Web is a new platform. Like you may think it's not ready, but this is also where you can come in and say, okay, here's a need in the market. Let me find a way to provide for that market. So just an example of just a real world example of, there's Flutter Web. There's many things needed right now on the web in regards to, dashboards for different kind of charting libraries. You need layout libraries for things like, something as simple as like layout grids and stuff that people are used to on the web. Things like templates, like, something as simple as like a WordPress template, but the same kind of idea for Flutter web applications. You want to have like this kind of theming that goes beyond material for some applications, or just pre-built kind of thing. So this is all places that developers can step in and be like, okay, I'm going to actually offer this, because it's not going to be there until we create it.
Sure. And I think that there could be, I think you're also elaborating on this in your talk, right? But I mean, I think since when we met in New York, right, we sat in this co-working coffee, and I think within 10 minutes we just discussed like 10 or 15 ideas that we came where we think, that's actually a good idea, and there's definitely a market for this in the future. So in the end, it's just up to the people to see what actually also is a bit of fun for them to implement, and also like a pain point. Because I think, especially what I can't emphasize it enough, it's a tough road, right? If you start building something yourself, it's going to be, you will have like a dip or something low, and you're just like, no one's going to use that. I'll have that all the time, right? Where you think, okay, this is Wiredash, it just can give user feedback. Is this like so good, And then I need someone from outside actually saying, man, it's so cool. Like when I show it to my clients, they always like, they can't grasp it, because it's like so crazy when it like makes the app smaller and stuff. And then those are the moments where you're actually like, yeah, that's really cool. And actually making someone else happy or making their life easier is also a big part, at least for me, to build something. So don't underestimate that you should always, go small steps and roll out stuff and just keep going.
Yeah.
And also, I also don't believe in the overnight like kind of success, right? So it's
it doesn't exist. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of work behind the scenes, usually all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so we had a good question in the chat. How are you finding maintaining your SDK? Like what kind of issues have you ran into? Not specifically, but like how are you dealing with like maintaining this as a small team / one person?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question, because I think there are also like two people who really helped me a lot in with Wiredash recently. It was Dominic and Nash from the community, because I actually started the whole thing by myself. But as you can imagine, building an SDK, then building a backend, and building a front end as one person is kind of tough at sometimes, right? And you just move slower than you might want to, right? So
Yeah.
actually, I just delivered the whole SDK up front, and then I just basically asked those two people to help me, and they did a really great job until now, right? And currently I'm also looking forward to actually rewrite some parts of the SDK to make it more sophisticated again, because some people told me things that aren't currently possible, although I already tried to make it work in most scenarios. But yeah, I'm just trying to build the stuff in the public there as well. So if you're on GitHub, make it open source. Sometimes even people are so interested in your project, even if it's like open source, but it's like a paid project. And I mean, there's a free plan as well. So feel free to go and check it out. It's free for developers, and it always will be. But even then, there are people who are excited because they really like this idea and how it works, and it actually does the job so well. So they would even commit their time and help you out with that. That's what I was saying and referring to: build your community and just be nice to the people, and they will be nice to you. It's always like that kind of stuff, right? And so yeah, it's just like an open source project. I'm working on it if I have time for it, or then I just hired two freelancers like Dominic and Ash to help me out at some point to just get out new features. Yeah, I hope I can find more time actually in the future, and I think I will, to add some really, really cool new features that I think are worth implementing and adding like details to it. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but works.
Yeah. So as we ask most people, what's your work-life balance? Like, how do you manage like being like an entrepreneur, but also, staying productive and being on the never-ending Twitter?
I think that's a good question I could ask you, because I think
yeah.
I think it's actually you're pushing out way more than I do. I'm just like, sometimes I feel like a slow tortoise, just like moving very slowly at times. And then you come up with like this widget builder, you come up with like thousands new libraries. And so that's actually a good question, because sometimes you go on Twitter and you see so many people building so many things. And that I also say, for sometimes I'm just not active on Twitter. I just don't check it at all, because you just somehow kind of get demotivated, right? At some point, because you're like, I'm still working on this feature for like 2 weeks, and there's like 2 guys coming up with like a whole new state management solution, right? In that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's actually a tough question to ask, and I think everyone has to deal with it in their own way, right? So I usually try to do also some sports and don't put too much pressure on myself. We'll definitely try to go the way of also having it as a side project, right? So I also have another business actually where we're building an app, right, for some other companies. So that's where I actually make money, because right now I don't make any money at all with Wiredash, because I just want to build it and get it out and get it in people's hands. So
for sure.
Yeah. So I don't have that pressure, and I think that's an important part of not burning out too fast, right? To have this pressure to deliver something, because I think also good stuff takes some time, especially if you want to involve the community and actually get those ideas. and iterate on those.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know for me, like, I have plenty of things that like I keep busy with outside of development. Like, I also was a musician, so it's like, music is such a big part of my life. I go hiking and I do a lot of VR. So it's like, but I also do a lot of procrastination. So like, yeah, I may be really busy, but it's also like I'll wait really long until to do a project and then I'll get it done in like 20 minutes. But it's like, it seems impressive, but I'm also like mulling it over in the back of my head, creating these things, and they're all like kind of forming, and then yeah, I'll just do it. Like the implementation is the easy part. It's the edge cases that keep me up at night.
Actually, I'm also a big procrastinator here. For me, what also helped a lot was actually to not put too much pressure on yourself, right? That's what
Yeah,
what I said. Like, I don't have to ship this like tomorrow, right? I mean, you have to have some soft deadlines for sure. Otherwise, you never
for
ship.
sure, for sure. Yeah,
But you also
even
shouldn't.
artificial ones.
Yes, you shouldn't like rely on this, or that would be the best part, not to rely on this as your everyday job, and you have to succeed, because in the end, right, you're not the one who's deciding if the market actually wants this idea or not,
It's
right? I
external.
mean, it's
Yeah,
not your problem, but if you're like very niche or very special, it's just your problem, right? And then you can start with something, and until, let's say, you realize that the idea has no potential, you shouldn't discard everything after like 2 weeks, right? So you have to invest 3 months, 4 months into actually developing and putting it out. And I think this can be kind of tiring as well if you do this like multiple times after each other, right? So if you fail once, everyone's just say like just keep on iterating and failing, but they don't take into account that it actually also tires you, right? You can't have like this high motivation, which I actually have, which I yeah, or which I would like to have, right, for new
yeah,
projects. And then it's more like it becomes like a strain of I have to do this now. And if it turns into this, I have to do this, the procrastination monster gets also bigger, and you're like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that right now. And that's
nice.
really bad.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped me.
All right, so before we jump into my talk, I wanted to real quick take a photo of everyone. So if you are on the call, please go ahead and activate your video. Let's all get a screenshot before we jump in, just in case we can see who's on before we transition, because people drop off. And then while we're doing that, Frederick, can you answer for me real quick? What do you think about Firebase as a backend?
Yeah,
While we're
Firebase is
letting Frederick one.
I actually think this is a great solution if you're if you're building just like a Flutter, maybe Flutter only app. I think it depends, right? It
Yeah,
depends on your, if you want to build, let's say, like don't want to build a backend, if you just want to rely on Firebase and Firebase functions to handle some kind of microtransactions or whatever, I think it's
yeah,
perfectly fine. But also think about that you somehow lock yourself in a bit. Although I think the services they are offering are great, but if you want to do some more, let's say, sophisticated things at some point, like having an
yeah,
API which is running all the time, having cron jobs, all that kind of stuff, you can do it up to a specific degree, right? But we all know at one point it just gets a bit hacky, right? I think
yeah, definitely.
for sure you can always start with Firebase when you're starting out an app, because you can always migrate the data. I don't think it's a big problem. You
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
export the data if you structure it
Build the
well.
layers.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you can always move the data. I don't think it's that big of a problem. And even if you use Firebase authentication, you can even export all the data as well, or just keep on using Firebase auth. I actually also use Firebase auth because I think it's a very
Yes,
good.
it's great. Yeah, it's a good abstraction layer too.
Yeah, exactly, right? And yeah, so I think it really depends on your needs. If it's just basically, if you're just using the standard functionality, and if especially Firestore offers you a
Yeah,
fine grade like search, then it's great. But if you need to have like a more sophisticated search, right? Like let's say something with geo stuff,
yeah,
location points. I mean, you can use geo hashes and stuff, but they're
for sure.
like they have their limits, right? So if
It's all
you
about the data.
I think it completely depends on the app idea as well. And then there's also
Yeah,
different technologies for that, right? Some things
yeah.
there's the real-time database that would make more sense, because I think they just bill you for the transfer of
Usage.
data and
Yeah,
exactly, and then the storage. and the Firestore actually counts reads and writes. So it's also a different product. So you have to think about, is it more, do I store like a little bit of data so the transfer rate would be low, and yeah, I have a lot of like real-time stuff, then I would probably go with real-time database instead of the Firestore, right? But if I
Well,
store,
you also got all of GCP too, so it's like you can do whatever you want.
exactly,
Which, by the way, there's plenty of shy people, so go ahead and turn your videos for all the introverts as well. So.
Okay, yeah, I think I answered your question. If you have any
Yes.
other questions, feel free, and I try to answer
Yeah,
them
well,
as
and
well.
we'll have another Q&A at the end too as well. So don't feel like if you need to ask your question again, you can. All right, so I think this is everyone. Last chance if you want to be making history, so go ahead. All right, let's see. That's it? All right, we're gonna do it. All right, we're gonna count down on 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nice. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so yeah, sweet. Yeah, it's good to get a kind of a good vibe before we jump in, because usually the people at the end aren't everyone that was here. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go into mine. But so I just wanted to kind of reiterate like a transition to be what I'll be talking about. So whereas yours was more of a case study, mine's going to be more talking about like, kind of examples on how to approach these situations, because I know that it can be really daunting, especially as a junior developer, when you're like trying to make your place in the developer community. It can be kind of scary to be like, okay, well, these are the things I'm good at. These are the things I want to do. And sometimes they don't overlap. And also like, oh, I'm good at building apps, but I don't know where to build them. I remember when I was first starting, like, I was like, oh, great, I can build an app, but I don't know who to build it for, and it was like that, you can do something on Dribble, or you can do something, whatever. And it's like, then it's just like taking that to like, okay, well, how do I actually make money on this? How do I take this from a hobby to a full-time job? How do I change careers? There's the whole like transitionary period that you face as a junior developer, or even just an experienced developer changing fields into a new technology. So, but today we're going to be talking about specifically Flutter as a service and how to do it in regards to, making money, full time. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation. I'm sorry for the people that will not be able to be admitted at the time. So let's go ahead and do this. And I will answer that question at the end. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, can you see my screen, Frederick?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. And thanks again to everyone joining. This is really exciting. This is kind of a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while, but you kind of got to wait for Flutter to kind of become more popular. You have to, it's like a catch-22. But yeah, I'm really excited because there are a lot of things that I've been implementing on my own, and things that you can as well. And I know Frederick has that. It's an untapped market, and we are just dipping our toes in, and there's a lot of room for everyone. So as you saw, like in Frederick's talk about how much it takes to get 1 million, like, I mean, that is just right on the nail. And a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to have, well, yeah, if you're only doing ads, you need millions of people. But if you are willing to, do paid up front or subscription or anything like that, you can easily like, make it with just like maybe less than 3,000 people. I think when I built my Tesla app, even though it wasn't approved for iOS, when I was waiting for like some of the numbers, I was targeting that I could have like only need to sell like, I think it was like 1,500 subscriptions, and then I would have been able to do it as my full time, like only doing that one application. But then I had like 12 other applications. So that's like, you know, my approach has always been like having multiple apps that you're working on so that they all can help each other. So like one will inspire the other one, and then one will also help lift the other one, because some apps are paid up front, some are ad, some are subscription, some are free, and they all like kind of promote each other and are complementary. So some will have dry seasons, and yeah, it's just an approach I take. So yeah, we'll talk about Flutter as a service by developers for developers. So Yeah, like as Frederick said, there's over 2 million Flutter developers. It's an exponential growth. And these are active Flutter developers. A lot are out in China, a lot of them are here in the US, and it's rapidly growing. And what's cool too about this is there's a lot of new developers. And you may be wondering, like, isn't that a problem? But it actually is a pretty nice thing in disguise, because what's cool about the great turnover, or not necessarily turnover, but there's a lot of new developers every year, is new developers and developers in general are lazy. So like, when you're first starting, you have the least amount of knowledge. And when you're an expert, you have the most amount of knowledge and the least, like, wanting to actually do it. So you have these two groups of people that you can, if you have a solution that they can buy, a solution that's off the shelf and plug and play, you can actually offer this to them, and then they can take that on, and you're that abstraction layer, which is really cool, because people are willing to pay for things that save time or things that they may not know how to do yet. This could be something as simple as on the, like something like Unity, for example, the marketplace. Like, you as a VR AR developer may be really good at writing the code and doing a bunch of the other stuff, but you may be like super slow at building models. But so something that I like to do is, like, I don't want to have to spend, 10 hours learning how to build leaves on a tree and how to like shade bark and do all this stuff. And then I have to think about all the other bazillion assets I have to add into the scene. You take that abstraction and be like, okay, well, I'm going to buy this model. I'm going to just implement it. And that you could take the same approach for applications, where you can build, forms for business applications where they can be used in a nice way. You can have layers of authentication protocols that they can just plug and say, I want to offer Google, Apple, and Twitter, and then kind of similar to like the Firebase Auth UI, if anybody's familiar. But you provide one level of abstraction higher. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So first of all, the market is quite large. There is, whoops, there we go. The market is quite large. You have a bunch of cross-platform devs looking to save time. Multi-platform is just a, sorry, let me hide this real quick. You have multi-platform issues because you have to deal with iOS, Android, Windows, Linux, web, and all these things that are all happening at the same time. If you have a bug on one, you're gonna have to like figure out how to solve which platforms are facing what. Like, you have Play services, you have iOS SDKs, you have web SDKs, and you have to write all that code. It's a lot of platform code, but it's a great place to step in as an independent developer. There's things like web deployment. When you have built your application, like, how do you release it into the wild? And this is a great place where a lot of tools, especially CodeMagic, is a great tool that's popped up and been targeting just Flutter, and be able to, and many other platforms for that matter, but be able to say, like, okay, well, we have web and desktop and mobile, and so you can just use this, and then we'll take care of all the hard stuff for you. So a lot of developers like don't have Apple devices, and this is a great place where you can step in and be like, okay, we'll handle the iOS signing. But this goes so much further. So there's things like Sparkle. It's an open source framework that allows you to release your applications on the open web, but then you have auto updating features to where you can get notified when an update is available. It can install in the background. This is a framework that's used by VS Code and Slack and any other tool that says like an update is available with that like very generic message. That's actually using the Sparkle framework, which is really cool. And then you also got things like application assets. So just as before with Unity, Flutter has many assets that can be used. You have app icons, you have screenshots, you have landing screens, you have so many other host of like widgets that go with the application that go so much more like beyond like just the application itself. So you have things like theming. We have material theming in Flutter and Cupertino, but you can build like your own custom theme libraries that you really target your specific product, your brand. And like, you can do something as simple as like on WordPress does this, where you can have a WordPress theme and then you install it, and then all of a sudden you have your own look and feel that makes it feel personal. And of course you can do this in material design, but you can also do this with just generic widgets as well. And I think this is a really cool place where people can step in. If you are a UI developer and you're great at designs, but you're really suck at like releasing applications, this is a great place for you to step in, because you can build all the UI component libraries you want and not have to worry about the logic. And then, the same thing goes for if you're a person that just likes doing backends and, oh, I just love backends and I hate UI. There's always a market for you too, because you can be building these SDKs and command line tools. You can build scaffolding libraries, and you can build, there's so much that goes with the application process that you can step in and have a market for. And as with any dev, you're going to be juggling all these different platforms at once. So it's like you have to choose what is important to you and how you can step in. So what are the current market needs? Well, it is niche at this time, but I don't know if you can call 2 million developers a niche. It's a niche when compared to probably the total developer market, but it's rapidly growing. And I know Flutter's already passed React Native, which is huge. But there is a market right now, and we have things like developer tools, anything that's relating to complementing the application process. You have things such as CI/CD platforms, such as CodeMagic. You have templating engines, which needs to exist, but there's a couple different ones that have kind of popped up. I don't think any of them really stuck or like have gotten super popular. Training and resources, so things like if you wanted to create a Udemy course or YouTube or video training series, this is a great place. If you're great at training people on how to do stuff, this is a wonderful place where you can step in as a developer to be able to train the new developers coming in. And you can charge for it. I mean, you can charge anywhere from, $10 all the way up to, $100 or more for a course. And you make that money every time that a new developer comes on. So I think this is a great place for content. Anything relating to dynamic content. So if you have a backend and front end SDK where you can, manage like showing new updated information, something like a dynamically generated, widget that is running from a backend service. Just something simple where someone has a need, they want to be able to update their app without having to send a new update to the App Store. You can fulfill that need. And then things like I mentioned earlier, premium widgets. So this goes for anything like paid charting libraries or paid templates that have built-in login screens and sign-up screens. Or something that I really like doing is like startup templates. So you can say, okay, what is the minimal viable Flutter project that gets me a login flow, going to the home screen and having a settings pop up that I can change the dark mode. And it seems so simple, but there's such a big need for it, and there's not a lot of people that are making it right now. So the more that you can build that and then release it and sell it, this will help people too. And of course, there's always going to be free content. Like, don't get me wrong, free is very important, but you can also make the distinction between having free content and paid content and be able to upsell on things that target businesses. So whereas, the developers that you're working with, may not always be your market, you can have it open source or whatever, but you also want to have like premium templates. So like a team, like, if Slack all of a sudden decided tomorrow they wanted to use Flutter, then you would want to be able to have a solution that said like, okay, here's our different widgets, and then you can buy them. And it's this kind of a transactional marketplace that you don't have to worry about who's using them, very permissible licensing, and you get the idea. And the biggest thing here is you're a developer helping other developers, because at the end you guys both succeed. There's going to be things that you're developing that other developers need, whereas like Frederick, for example, may have like a supporting library like Wiredash that really helps my applications, but I could have something that could really help his applications. And because we're not having to both build the same things, we both can focus on our own things and then also help each other in the end. So I wanted to go over some like example applications of things that I've done, tools that I've approached, and some kind of successes that I've experienced so far. So Flutter Storyboard was one of my very first developer tools I built for developers, like from the day one. I wanted to, I started with iOS, so I was very much, using Storyboard to lay out all my native iOS applications. I was really pleased with it. And so when I came to Flutter, that was one of the biggest things I missed. So I released the MVP version of Storyboard, and it is far from finished. I have tons of cool updates coming out, but it allows you to, with just simple wrapping your Flutter widget, your main app, with Storyboard, it will actually take all of your screens and your routes and lay them out on a canvas that you can see and update all at once. So if you wanted to test your login screen beside your home screen, beside your detail screen, beside your settings screen, you can. And you can just like you would hot reload, and then all of a sudden you can update the change and see it live on all your screens. You don't have to navigate to the app. What's really cool about this is when it's combined with Flutter Desktop, you get some really cool stuff because I allow you to choose a device frame on the storyboard. So you can say, you can make it like a mock-up like an iPhone or Android, iPad, and it'll lay out everything for you. But what's neat about that is you can have your desktop resize the window however you want, zoom out the canvas to how it fits, but then you're developing, in your IDE, and you don't have to have be running on a device. And Flutter Desktop is way faster for hot reload. And of course, there's things that are not going to work. If there's an SDK that's not available on desktop and it is on iOS, you're still going to have to test on a real device. But I think it really gets you really far. You also have the ability to set dummy data, as well as just having various things like screenshots, which I know people are using it with. And for those that haven't seen it before, this is the storyboard. It allows you to have all the frames in one screen, really smooth. It's really high performant. You could have 100 screens on or more, and it doesn't affect. It's only rendering what's on the actual visible window at any given time. You can fully interact with every single screen that's shown. And like I said, this is the MVP. There's a lot of really cool updates planned, including, panning and zooming and a bunch of other stuff with multi-touch gestures on the iPad. But yeah, it's just a simple, is an idea I probably had in just a weekend and really wanted to implement. So next I want to talk about Widget Studio. And if you haven't seen it already, I released Widget Studio about a week and a half ago, and it has actually been trending on the iOS, macOS, and iPadOS App Store in the top 25 developer tools. What's really cool about this application is it allows you to develop these multiple widgets all at once, but in a standalone kind of a way. Whereas with a Flutter editor, you're with VS Code or something, you're building an application and you're building a material app with multiple screens. And then I wanted to create that abstraction of, okay, I want to create a login screen, I want to create a home screen, I want to create a material app, and then everything's a widget. So then you can copy the individual widget out and then use it wherever you want. Or you can reference multiple widgets. Like on the last update, which I'll show after my presentation, you can actually reference other widgets on the canvas, and it exports everything for you all at once. And from day one, I built this to export code that you can use in your application today. And I know Adobe XD and some other tools have come out, but they are exporting code that's really not meant to be used. It's like, okay, using a bunch of transforms and a bunch of verbose kind of things. Whereas mine is, doing it the Fluttery way. So when you have a scaffold and an app bar and a floating action button and a center and a text, it'll do it just like you would if you were building a Flutter application yourself, writing code. The nice advantage of that is because I'm building it for developers and I use it myself, if anytime you use properties like in the constructor, it'll automatically add them as debug outputs. You automatically get a to JSON construct or method in your widget. And there's a bunch of other stuff that I've added, which is a lot of sugar. But what's really cool is you can then have the advantage of having a color picker or playing around with widgets. I love developing these widgets on an iPad because I could be on an airplane and be laying out these different widgets and really start to get to know every single widget. Because it exposes you every single property that the widget has at one time, I've learned so much about the Flutter widgets just in the past 2 weeks, even after been using Flutter for over 2.5 years. So for me, it's wow, I didn't know that textile had this one property. And because of that, because it's exposed out in front and center, you can really play around with it and not have to worry about it messing up your project because it's isolated. And it has full undo redo, so then you can just remove anything that you mess up. And of course it has drag and drop and stuff like that. But this is just an example of me building a tool that is made for developers that can be used in a real world way. And Another thing to kind of preface this with too is, there's many tools like this that need to be made for Flutter. There's, anything that's relating to networking or things that, relate to templates, just like I brought up earlier. All these kind of tools need to exist because for developers wanting to save time, you can help step in and be like, okay, I can provide this, and then people will use it. And not everybody's going to use it. That's not the goal. Like we said earlier, you only need like 0.0025%. And because of that, you will be very happy with, the kind of adoption you get. It's not about making thousands of people happy, or I mean, millions of people happy. It's just like worrying about maybe 1,000, maybe a couple thousand. And that's a whole lot easier to manage when you approach it from that perspective. Choose your pricing options to where you have a market that's at a price point that makes sense for you and what you can actually manage, and things that you want to get up for and be able to do. So here's a quick demo of the widget studio where I'm just taking these different elements and I'm dragging them on the canvas. And what's cool is like it's very fluttery. So like, if you have a preferred size widget like an app bar, you can't drop it onto a container child or anything like that. You have a full widget tree that you can inspect and edit. Every single property that the widget has, you can then use. Even since just making this GIF, I've added like 20 more widgets. So we're adding a ton of widgets every single day. And we're targeting the end of the material catalog very soon. But it's just a simple tool that allows you that solves the need of exporting for Flutter. So as you see here, I do 2 brackets and then I say count, something very simple. But when you go to the export code, it'll automatically give you a constructor option that says count. So then when you're using this widget from other places, you have that option that you can then send in. So it's kind of like almost like a view model in that aspect. So there's also things in regards to application support. So I'm working on some applications that help you design icons for your iPad, Mac OS, and Android applications. Easy, like being able to upload and download an icon, resize it. Things that also should exist and that I've kind of taken stabs at, but if kind of like in the open source level right now. But PWA manifest generator, privacy policy generator. These are 2 things that like are needed in every application in Flutter right now, but there's not like a good tool that's there's tools that generate it, but like being like the owner of that and being like, okay, I'm going to do this better than anyone, and we do it right, and I'm just going to nail it to where it's like people are like, oh yes, like I'm going to go to that tool every time. That's like where you want to be, and that's how you serve the niche. And just as a side note, just because there's many apps that exist in a market, that doesn't mean that you can't enter the market. If nobody is really serving it well, that's probably the reason why there's so many competitors or so many tools available. For example, one of my very first Flutter applications, which I originally built native, was a pitch pipe. And when I originally built it, there was plenty of pitch pipes on the App Store. I mean, there was, at least just in the one category alone, there was probably over 100. But I decided to take an approach on the pitch pipe that was completely different and made it super clean, professional, like, very modern. And because of that, like mine, like reached, like it's now the #1 and has been the #1 for over a year and much longer than a year. But in the last year, like nobody's come close. But the purpose of that is because all the other people have just built it in a way that didn't solve what people were actually wanting. And so when you find and you serve that niche, you really can help developers, and anyone for that matter, really take a problem, solve it, and then they'll be your brand champion. So other things too, real quick, you can also build screenshot editors. So, every app store, Google Play and macOS, Windows, Linux, all need screenshots. And it's something that seems really simple, but can be a pain in the butt. And what's really cool about Flutter and the ability to override your target platform, you can actually generate the screenshots without running on an emulator. As long as you run it in the specific dimensions, they're valid to be exported. And then other simple things like a splash screen editor, because this is something that's often forgot about, but I know on lower end devices, this can be a real pain. So here's just a quick example of me building an icon generator. It allows you to upload any icon you want. And what's cool is when you download it, downloads an archive that you can literally drop directly into your applications. So it creates all the folders for you. And here I'm going to show the individual ones. But what's cool is like you have the icons in the correct format, in the correct folder structure, and you literally, it's a plug and play kind of system. And then you as a developer just worry about creating your one icon. What's cool in the new WWDC announced that we can now support SVG icons, which is going to be really great for iOS and macOS, but still a pain in the butt on web and Android at the moment, and Windows for that matter. So some other things that I've been doing that also need tons more tools built with is CLI tools. Not every developer loves CLI. In fact, a lot of people that like no-code tools hate CLI, or anybody that's like a designer usually doesn't want to do CLI. But for developers and backend developers, this is like bread and butter. Like I'll choose a CLI any day because I can build my own tool around it. So things like app scaffolding, templates, app clones, just really easily being able to say like, you know, whatever, generate this, and then it just generates it to where you can have it exactly how you need, always in the way you need it. This can also be just as simple as like, I know Angular has this generate system where you can say like, okay, generate this component, generate this service, generate this. And once you introduce structure, you can go so much faster. Every single one of my applications follows the same folder structure, the same, pretty close to the same state management, but I have the same structure in every single one of them. And because of that, I can copy and paste between projects. I can jump into any project, no matter if it's like a year ago, and know where everything is. I'm never confused. And it's because you have that structure. And it's okay if the structure evolves, but you got to evolve with it. So it's like, you know, if you do a new practice, you got to make sure to implement it in all the places to where it's consistent. When you don't have consistency, that's when you're going to really bite yourself later. So other things like reducing boilerplate. So anytime you have this excessive amount of stuff to do, a quick example is I made easy web view, which is all the boilerplate for regular web view. And just simple tools like that, where you're handling that abstraction layer of doing all this complicated, unnecessary stuff, but then the developer just gets to have like a couple line implementation. That is prefaced with the fact that if they want total control, they're not going to be using your thing. If a person needs all the fancy callbacks and, you know, whatever they want, they're going to have to do the regular implementation, just as what you're trying to do. Your goal where you're stepping in is for the lazy person that doesn't want to do all that stuff and just says like, I want it like in 5 minutes be able to build this application, and I just need a web view or whatever, insert widget here. Other thing too is code generation. I think Remy has done a wonderful job with Freezed and a bunch of his other packages that relate to code generation, where you can say, okay, here's a specific need in Dart where we needed immutability and JSON serialization and copy with constructors and stuff like that. And you can be like, okay, well, I can build a package and you know, a set of tools that will do all this for you. Another area where you can do is localization. I know there's Localize and some other ones have targeted Flutter, but it allows you to say, okay, well, we have this problem, which is internationalization in Flutter applications, and we have a solution which is building your JSON files of your AAB files for all of your translation files. Like I said earlier, dynamic content, and also just the service abstraction of insert whatever service you're using. You can then be the abstraction for the person that's using it. So another big thing is you got to find your market, because not every, you know, market is the best one, and a lot of it takes, like, I know Frederick talked about it a little bit, but you know, you got to kind of see what the market's going to be first. So you got to put something out there, let it bite, and see like, oh, okay, actually that's way different than what I was expecting, or oh wow, people really love this, and that's the thing I was caring the least about. So it's like, you know, it's about tailoring your applications over time and being flexible to say, okay, well, the market's kind of taking this shift, I'm going to see where it takes me. And one of the things I've learned in my life too is being ready for when that wave happens. Like, you don't need to go buy a surfboard when the wave has already started. You want to have the surfboard and be ready way before the wave is, you know, come to you, because when you're there and ready, you get to experience all the joys of being the first mover and having the great market of, you know, being with others. But if you're always playing catch up, like, you're never going to get ahead, or it'll be really, really difficult. You want to find people that are highly motivated and willing to pay. And funny enough, developers are one of the people that love and know what it's worth to pay for applications. Not every developer, but I would say most developers understand that, like, if an application is $10 or $5 or even $1, like, a developer would probably not think twice about buying something, whereas a person that is not a developer would be like, oh, I'd never pay over X amount. And in fact, I buy so many applications just because I want to support the developers, regardless if I use them myself. We also have, like I said, you want to make sure you evolve over time and then support the new developers coming in. This is kind of a unique field where Flutter is, for better or for worse, targeting cross-platform development in a both complex and super easy way. So, like, you can use Flutter and not know about Swift, C++, Linux, or C# or whatever you need, or Java even for that matter, or Kotlin. And you can only use Dart, and then you can build all your applications. Is great. But there's also the developers, whereas like myself, if you know how to write the platform code, then you are in like a really good position because you can be building these really custom tailored experiences. But because Flutter tailors to both, you have a lot of new people coming in that's like, this is probably their first introduction into app development. So they're going to be only knowing Dart, and they're going to need some tools that are going to step in. So maybe you're just a developer that knows how to write Swift and Kotlin, just a simple example. Well, you can then be a contractor for writing plugins. So if they say, okay, well, we need X, Y, and Z, you can step in and be like, oh yeah, I'll build that plugin for whatever your company is needing. So you get to build plugins, and then they get to just build the applications. Just another quick example. So yeah, it's really exciting stuff, and it's all about being ready for when the market comes. And then lastly too, we want to talk about like pricing options, because you want to make it worth your time. You don't want to be like spending all this time developing and creating this stuff to like have like it all fall on your face because like nobody wants to pay for it, or it's free, and then like, or like maybe you only have like one user, and it's like there's so many areas in which you just got to be so careful. So some things that that I kind of take an approach is like there's a couple different models you can take, which is like subscription, which I think is really good. Of course, people will have subscription fatigue, but it's about offering it at a price that makes sense to you and your users. Paid upfront applications are one of my favorite type of applications. There are disadvantages, of course, as always, but for me, the trade-offs are really nice. So first of all, with paid upfront applications, at least on iOS and macOS, is I don't have to deal with the in-app purchases, which I have many applications that I've done it for, but all that abstraction is just like, okay, well, if they want it, it's going to be like, they're going to see the reviews, and it's up to them to whether they get it. What's nice about that is Apple offers search ads, which is really cool, where you can actually price your application at a certain level. You say, I want to spend X amount on search ads, and you only pay for when the application is installed. So you're not having to pay for general marketing, and you can never lose money on marketing, which I think is a great place for paid upfront applications. Like I said, there's other disadvantages. People are like, oh, well, what about a free trial and stuff like that? And this is where approach I've been taking recently is offering the web version as the free version. I totally believe in the open web. I think web has been the best thing that has ever happened for mobile development too. And I love how powerful you can make things on the web. Flutter is a great example where you can release something on the web and all these native platforms and offer these experiences to where if they want to try it and do whatever they want, they could do it on the web. But if they want like a higher quality experience that's, multi-touch gestures and doing all the like the native offline sync and the high performance rendering and 120 FPS, all that kind of stuff happens on the native applications, but you still get to offer your product for the people that want like a PWA to be installed on their home screen, for example, on the web. And they don't have to be the same experience. It can be, and I think it's great when it is. Flutter uses Skia as an optional flag, which makes it really good and performant. And actually, it's really hard to tell the difference between native and web. But other things too is, you can offer courses on, for Flutter and any other frameworks. Another nice thing too is support. So, for example, like if Frederick wanted to hire a team to do support, he could then target, really big businesses and be able to charge tons of money for support because businesses are willing to pay for that. You don't even have to be the one supporting them. And I think that's great for even other applications too, because it's something that you don't realize how much people value at big businesses. Just by having a 24/7 access to a support line, they will pay. You just name the price and they will pay it. Like they will choose your tool over other ones based on the support. And then in tying in with that, having teams to be able to just support, okay, collaboration on your tool and be able to working with other people and just like having the options for, who can pay for what. So what are some future ideas that you can do as a Flutter developer, general developer, or someone just looking in to get into the market? Well, like I said earlier, I think app translations are another thing that I don't think is completely served yet. I think there is still room for a really good, or maybe a couple people, to build an app translation service that's not only easy to use, it works way better with Flutter, something that you could like literally extract stuff and have ability to change on the back end. And I know Localizy has done a lot of it, but I still feel like there's some more that can be done there. Database tooling, so anything relating to like SQLite or other persistence options. This is still something that's an open question. Realm is really flirting with Flutter at the moment, so it's getting close, but not quite there yet. Other dev tools, just because Flutter releases dev tools doesn't mean that you can't release your own. There's been some other examples of people on Twitter that have announced different dev tools that they've made or examples, and I think that's really cool. A marketplace, this is still yet to be made with Flutter, a place where people can go and buy these resources. And then I'd just like to say on that one, people have built marketplaces, but it's important to take this from a perspective of collaborating with other creators, building it in a way that the developers and the creators that are creating want to be on this marketplace. So whoever builds it, it needs to be something that people want to use. And it's not about like whatever the prettiest tool wins, because that's not the case. It's not about whatever usable tool wins. It's about whichever tool solves the need the best in a way that helps everyone. Because it may not be the best tool, but if it solves the purpose really, really well, doesn't have a lot of issues with bugs and stuff like that, that usually is the one that wins out. And then, like I said earlier, other resources that relate to Flutter applications, whether it's like, something, even if you're just really good at writing a book, something I think would be really cool that Rust has done is building a Dart book, or a Flutter book, and just have like a really simple, like interactive, like from here, like, 0 to hero, and just say like, okay, here's how to do this, this, and this, and this. And, stuff like that I think is really good. So in conclusion, you want to build and develop for other developers. Anytime you are saving time, that is an opportunity cost for someone else that is going to be doing the same thing. So that's where you can step in and be like, okay, well, actually, we can save a lot of money if we don't have to do this, and I'll be willing to pay X amount. So anytime you see that and you're like, wow, this took a lot of effort, you're like, I wonder if I can actually just build this as a package and sell it for someone else or give it away. And even if you, just as a side note, even if you don't want to charge for anything, there's other options out there. You can also do like Patreon and have like Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal donation links to where there's plenty of people that just do that. And then of course having YouTube channels and whatnot. So keep that in mind too, that you can still do this and still have support. But I do believe that you want to make it worth your time regardless of what you're doing. Charge when it makes sense, just like I said. And then also, some things should remain examples. Not every product that you're going to make should become a product. It's sometimes just be better just released as an example and be like, okay, this is great, but like, I think I'm going to defer to other people. Like, for example, like I built a podcast player, and it's like, I'm crazy about music applications. I build them all the time, but there's so many podcast players. I don't want to compete in the market. So I just made it open source and released it for others. So just a simple example. There's a growing market of new developers. Keep that in mind, because you're going to be targeting people that have never coded. This is the first thing they're coding with, or people that are very experienced and don't want to do anything at all. So build for both those audiences. Serve the underserved. If you are finding people that, are frustrated, those are great people that would love to find this kind of service. If everyone's happy, then there's not really a market for you to have. And then, like I said earlier, support is worth paying for. and way more than you actually think. Yeah, just look up some of like your favorite tools and just look how much like support costs for 24/7. You'd be pretty surprised. Like we can be sometimes talking about like triple digits. So yeah, we're going to jump into questions real quick, but just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this. I've been working on this for a while and just wanted to, talk about some of these things that I've been going through and experiencing personally, and really excited to kind of hear you guys' feedback. All right, so let's go into the questions.
Yeah, first of all, Rody, I think this was a really dense and interesting. I mean, I guess we have a few participants here, and I think you dropped so many ideas.
Cool.
There should be at least one for everyone in this call.
That's right
Now. And
go forth
I
and
also
create.
I can't emphasize more the fact that people should just build something that actually fixes the problem or fixes for them, and to emphasize the fact that you just need to find like something like a very small thing, what you was referring to, serving the underserved, serve just like a few, maybe just 1,000 developers, right? And you could live off that. That's something
Easily.
that's very important. Yeah. And don't always approach stuff with this, shoot for the moon kind of mindset, although this is great. And I like this as well, but don't burn your fingers, right? Like with those big ideas, just start out small, try to like get your foot into the door with a small idea that you maybe target for Flutter only, and then you can evolve out of it. Like you just build it for Flutter. Then at some point, maybe you see, oh, there's a need for it. Like Flutter developer have this need, or maybe even multi-platform developers have this need. And then you port it over to React as well. And then you grow, and then you become, at one point, like after a few years, you become the market leader. And this is, in my opinion, how you grow a sustainable business, right? Out of starting with a niche and then having this organic growth. And I think even the big players, right, like Google, Facebook, all of them, they started actually very small and never thought that they would be multi-billion companies, right? So
easily, yeah,
I think that's very, very important and a very powerful message as well for the people. Nice.
Well, thank you. So I'll just going to jump into some of the questions. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce any of your names. I don't want to get them wrong. So we're going to go with how do you manage learning new things and prioritize? So for me, I'm really big on creativity and passion, but those mingle all the time. So it's like one thing that you keep from burning out too is you stay up on different things that are unrelated to what you're doing. So this means like, doing stuff in VR and doing stuff outside like coding and music and performing and sports, and everything that's unrelated helps you with coding. Like if you're only doing coding, you're only going to be good at coding. But if you learn these other ideas, then you're going to be like, oh, you know what? I actually did think of that from over here. And, creativity is just innovation, regurgitating different ideas and, outputting different ones. I'm just going to kind of do just a couple of other ones real quick.
Now, maybe I can elaborate on this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because I think there was quite a long question as well, because he was also saying that he is feeling there's a lot to learn Flutter, and I end up not doing much due to the procrastination talk that we had, right? I think most importantly is not to think about doing stuff, but just doing. This is a very important thing. Just start with something small. If you think about something like I want to build a smart home application, right? Just start with something small. Start with an app that has a button and turns on a light, right? That does like some kind of network request. And then from there, you will go from there because you will get motivated on the way. Don't overthink. This is like literally the worst thing you can do, that I always do myself. If you think too much about a possible solution, like even our database schemas, how you structure your data, all that kind of stuff, be assured you can always change the stuff later on if it gets successful, but just get started. Don't let this.
Well, if you're saving into version control, like I know a lot of people that they're always just scared, and it's like, well, they never saved and GitHub, so it's like, yeah, of course you would never be able to refactor.
But sometimes I keep myself like just overthinking. We all know this phenomenon where we think about naming a variable, right? Which is just like, you can rename it at any time if you come up with a better name at some point, right? So just
you will come up with a better name. You're never going to get it right the first time.
Just just continue and work with what you have. This is a very important thing that I learned. Otherwise, you will always like overthink stuff and then do nothing at all, right? That's a very big
And the idea of like incremental improvement, like it doesn't have to be like version 1, version 2, or version 3 every time. Like it can be very much like, okay, all I did on this update was just choose a new font, or maybe I just like changed a couple things, but like I've more recently switched the idea of just like, okay, you know what, I'm just going to release things as I add them and stop like trying to be like this wave of pressure of just like, okay, well 2.0 is out and it has this and this and this, and now it's time to jump on, because then all you're doing is creating people that just are waiting for the next version, versus like if you're outputting all the time, in which, by the way, we talked about this before anyone joined or as a couple were, but this is a great idea for like a Twitter account. And when you have a Twitter account for your application, you're allowing you to generate hype over time, and you're destroying the barrier of 1 version, 2 version, 3 version. You're just saying, here's some exciting updates, here's some discussion about it, and you get to really connect with your users on an individual level and see like what is actually they're wanting. Because if like Wiredash is a perfect example, you don't want to build something that nobody wants, and you want that feedback. You want to be like, okay, well, I really love it and everybody else hates it. That's not where you want to be. So
Also, I can just underline the stuff with the Twitter account. Also put yourself out there as someone who builds something, and you will be surprised if people know that you're building this. They're also like, they don't care if something's not working, if they know it's basically one developer, Rody built this, and I don't expect something from Rody that I would expect from a big corporation, right? Like Google or something.
Exactly.
So if I would just approach it completely differently, and you really notice that in the community as well. So people like, yeah, I just found this bug. If you can, check it out in the upcoming days, that's fine. It's not like, oh, I found this bug, I don't want to use this app anymore. It's like,
how dare you? Yeah.
It's a totally different picture. Because when I released apps to Google Play, right, and it just stopped working or it crashes, most of the users are like, oh yeah, this is shitty app, it's like uninstall and you're gone. They will never download it again. But if you're building something for a community which you're a part of, and people know that, that's like they're way more forgiving, and they like to help out. Right? And this is very important as well.
I would like to say though, like, don't feel nervous. You can feel apprehensive, but like don't feel like you're being judged in the community by it either. Like, just because you're creating this, like, this is not like oh wow, Frederick really sucks at doing this kind of X development. And it's like, it's your product can live outside of yourself as well. Like, like your product can be bad and you can still be a good developer. I've made plenty of bad products. It's like, it's like they don't define you. And I would just say, like, because when I was first starting out with coding and development, that was my problem, is I took everything way too personally. I'd be like, oh, they hate this. Like, oh, they just hate my design. And so it's like, you second guess everything. But yeah, I think it's really important to remember that there is that distinction. So when you're doing this, develop it for the community and for yourself first, because if you want to be using it all the time, then there's a chance that the other developers in the same technology do too. So I'm going to also talk about, so the free trial, I talked about in my talk, but yes, you can offer free trials for paid applications. You can do this on both Apple and Google Play. However, I like to have the web version as the free trial, because it's an unlimited free trial. They can do it as long as they want, and whenever they're ready to upsell, they can just install it. Microtransactions. Go ahead.
Sorry, Rody, for interrupting. I think there's actually a really interesting question as well that you might have missed. There's someone who asked, have you seen a demand from developers?
Oh, yeah. There you go.
For premium widgets. I think that's actually an interesting question. So maybe you have some insight on that?
Yeah. I think it's a huge demand right now. Currently, there's a couple different players in the space. There's a charting library. I cannot think of their name at the moment, but they have like, is it called Syncfusion? Yeah, Syncfusion charts. They offer paid Flutter widgets for these really complex charting kind of stuff. I think this is a great place. A package that I'm working on that is released, but like far from like the level of where I want it to be, is called data tables. There is a great data tables library that exists for the web, and there's nothing like that for Flutter yet. Whereas like you're taking like a material design implementation of a data table and you're adding all the other features like download as Excel, searching and reject search, and be able to have column sorting and all that kind of stuff. Be able to step in and be like, okay, I'm going to provide that best experience. You just give me the JSON data or SQLite data, and I can handle it from there. So that's another great place. Premium widgets also are great for anything relating to Firebase or AWS, or insert your whatever cloud backend here. You get to provide widgets of like, okay, here's a login button. The login button does all the abstraction layer for doing, showing up the pop-up screen, showing up this, and then all you have to do as a Flutter developer is you customize what you say on the button, making sure you have the correct files installed, and it does everything for you. Something super simple, I'm a huge fan of Block, specifically Flutter Block and some other state management tools, but I built block libraries that allow you to just have a drop-in solution for authentication to where it handles all the login, sign out, sign up, change email, change, whatever. You as a developer, just make sure you call these specific methods. I think this is a great place for premium widgets, and it's a huge market. And not everybody's going to pay for them. If you don't want to pay for something, you are more than welcome to build it yourself. Keep in mind, the theme of this talk is you are trading off the opportunity cost. If you're saving time, that's where someone is willing to pay. Not everybody is willing to do that. They're willing to put in the time to build it themselves. That's okay. You are targeting the people that just are wanting that convenience. I want to also, related to that, I want to talk about the microtransactions and the unlock features with in-app purchase. And yeah, I have an application that's completely built around, in-app purchases for unlocking stuff and subscriptions and stuff like that. That's another place I think a tool needs to step in. Revenue Cat exists, but it's currently a pain in the butt on Flutter to be able to like both test iOS and Android. Their iOS is announcing some new SDKs. They're going to make it a lot easier, but Android and iOS at the moment are really hard to test to see, like, making sure the payments went through, testing the devices and what it counts. But yeah. And then, about my online compiler. I've actually made a ton of progress. I'm actually rebuilt it in Aqueduct, which is really cool. So you can build, run, and update any file remotely, which is really cool. Do you see any other questions you want me to target, Frederick? You can just call them out if you want me to.
Yeah, man, I can just also ask tomorrow maybe.
Cool.
Yeah, what is your current opinion about Flutter Web, the professional use of Flutter Web? But I think we already had this before, like answered in some kind of way regarding the console. I don't know if.
Yeah, I can talk about it. So
rephrase that really quick.
It all depends on the application itself. I think Widget Studio and some of my other applications are a great use for Flutter Web because it's like it's an editor. It's a bunch of like components and things, all clicking, and you have the state management, and there's so many like little nuances that like I think Flutter does great because you're not having to do CSS, you're not having to do anything. You're just literally painting to a canvas and handling it all. Things that aren't great for Flutter Web. And I built my website in Flutter Web and some other things and recently changed them back to Jekyll because it's not great for static content or server-side rendering content right now. So anytime you have like a blog post or things that are just like, dumb websites that have no application state and are just literally HTML files, yeah, Flutter Web is not the solution. It doesn't mean it won't be the solution in the future, but right now, I think anything that's static should probably stay static. And honestly, HTML is not bad. It's gotten a lot better, and with web components and a bunch of other things that have been added recently to the web spec, it makes it pretty easy to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's another good question. I actually really like, which says if you have 12 apps that you all handle by yourself, how do you handle the product side of things, measuring A/B testing, results, tracking analytics, etc.?
Yeah, for me, I'm a huge fan of Firebase and GCP backend. So I make sure to have Google Analytics in all my applications or most of my applications. I track events for different kind of stuff. I can really easily measure like kind of a general app's vibe on like, okay, people are using this screen way more than I thought, or just simple things of like if an app is crashing or not. I kind of get like a barometer of all my applications to see which ones are, good, what's the general feedback. And I also measure my analytics on Google Play and App Store for seeing like, okay, is like it trending upwards, downwards, is it stale, is nobody buying it? So based on that, it really kind of dictates when I do updates for apps. I try to only do an update for an app when it comes down off the bell curve just a little bit, because there's somewhat of like and this is not for new apps, this is for like existing apps. But when your app is starting to go down, that's a great place to step up, because otherwise, if you do too many updates in a row, like you kind of like are competing with your own updates. So it's like, you may make an update and then like someone like only sees the latest update and doesn't realize that these X features were in there because you just overshadowed it. So giving space to have the updates has really helped me. So it's like, I may only have to update like an app like 3 times a year, but as long as those are really solid updates, usually that can be really useful. And then it's also about managing, like for A/B testing, for example, I love to use the web for my beta playground. So it's like I'll just do crazy UIs and do whatever, and then I consider my iOS applications and my Android applications as the stable branch. So it's like it'll update way slower, but it'll have the refined, almost no bugs, stuff like that. So I think that's a really cool distinction too. Like, be crazy on the web, be stable on the app stores. And then you get people that are really solid and want the applications and the support and the, just like, I never want this to fail. But then you also get the people that want to try out all the crazy new features too.
Do you have one or two like favorite kind of side projects you're working on, which you give priority to? Probably maybe it's like the widget studio thing that you're building.
Yeah, so for me right now, I have 2 projects that are taking the most of my time, which is Widget Studio, which has still been trending in top 25 of the App Store. So that takes a lot of my attention right now. And then also Hymns for Worship is another app I built, which is cool because it's a globally distributed sheet music and presentation creator. So it's used by over 3,000 people, like almost every day. So it's like very popular. And because of that, there's a lot of issues that come when you have a popular application. So support and bugs and things aren't working. So yeah, those are the 2 that probably take the most of my time of the 12 apps.
That's awesome. I'm just skipping through the questions. Yeah, you mentioned and you mentioned using Aqueduct. Aqueduct,
Yeah,
is that correctly pronounced?
Aqueduct. Yeah.
It's this backend RAG solution. What is your view on using Dart generally on the backend side?
Yeah, so it's not always my first solution, but there are solutions that I think it's great. If you're using something like protobufs or anything that's related to gRPC, it doesn't matter what you're using on the back end. But with that all being said, I've built backends using C#, .NET. I built backends using, just straight up, general Node.js or something as simple. I've also played around with Rust and all these kind of things. I think Dart is really cool, especially with the asterisk of like, Dart compiling to native, like Dart to native, because it allows you to really just submit a binary and run it wherever you want. I think Dart is really great for that. A cool thing about Aqueduct, and the reason I chose it, is it allows you to run on multiple isolates. So you can have basically however many cores your computer has, that's how many cores the HTTP server can run on. So I think that's really cool.
Do you think it's ready for prime time? Like, would you use
Yes,
it
by far. Yeah.
in a big scale production application?
Yeah, I definitely would.
Okay, cool. Yeah, can you recommend any documentation tool to help users understand your package or give cookbooks, examples, etc.? I saw Remy uses Docusaurus for Riverplot.
Yeah, that's my current weakness. I like documentation slows me down, and I know I have to do it, and I know it's important. But yeah, that's something I struggle with, is having the time and writing out the documentation. Because for me, I feel like the second I write the documentation, I'm stuck to it because my apps change so much. But it may be also a good thing as well to kind of have some stability. But yeah, I really like, so if you're building an HTTP server, I really like auto-generate documentation. So things like Open API is really cool. I know, I think it's called not swashbuckle, but there's some kind of framework where you can use this with Open API standard. It'll generate your API documentation. The same goes for Flutter applications. You can actually generate and annotate your classes to where it can actually, yeah, Schweiger, thank you. And you can generate your documentation using Darkdoc, so it can actually, give you stuff like that. But I kind of like to take a different approach to like making YouTube videos and blog posts, and as well as I like to have it dynamic. So things like, in-app workflows to where it's targeting specific widget keys. That way, no matter if I refactor the app, it's still, is always up to date. Because like the second you take a screenshot, it's already outdated, that's always a pain. Yeah, because it's very much of a dynamic thing.
Cool. Yeah, maybe I can also add one point to that. For Whitish, I'm currently using actually WooPress. So it's basically also a static site generator, which is kind of good. I mean, it's free and open source. You can also go with something like Gitbook, but then it's already paid from the first second on.
Yeah.
The thing about if you go with something like WooPress is that you can just have your README files, right, and then basically deploy on a commit or something to Netlify and just push your documentation live and basically also run it for free if you're like having a small product, or small documentation. So that's quite cool. Yeah, I think another interesting question, which I think you more or less already answered, is how would you approach server-side rendering on Flutter Web for SEO purposes, right? Like, I mean, I think that's a very important question, especially for like in Flutter replacing web development, right? Because obviously you want search engines to index your site, especially if you're building like a meta search engine or whatever, or something where the content is very important to be indexed, right? So do you think there will be a solution in the future, or what are the current views from your on this topic in regard to Flutter Web?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways I can answer that. I will answer it with first of all, the Flutter team is working on solutions to make your websites more SEO. In fact, since Flutter Web is launched, it is way better than it was. Things like generating a virtual semantic tree, things like generating virtual sitemaps and stuff like that. So those do exist. PWA manifest is really helpful for your application. There's a lot of things that go around that. Taking one step further, optimizing for SEO. AmpStore is a Flutter application on the web we built that needs to be very SEO dependent. So things like URL routing is really important. You can actually, Simon has done a really good PR to the Flutter thing that's not quite merged yet, but it removes the hash. So there's things like just disabling the hash can fix most of the issues there. But just having URLs that are static and changed and have the same content, as long as you keep using them, Google will pick them up and then start to serve them as well. This also, taking us further, things that I've done in the past to kind of get around some of the limitations is using Firebase redirects. I can actually redirect to Firebase functions that then return static content. So then, like, let's say I have a blog post, for example, I can link to that URL and it returns the markdown in HTML form or whatever I want. And that's indexable on the web, that's copyable and whatever, but you also have a Flutter web application. So you can build these like kind of a hybrid approach, which I think honestly is going to be the first approach. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's just like you making these trade-offs. But that being said, nowadays it's like there's a lot of people that care about SEO. I'm one of them. But it's also apparently not as a big deal as a lot of people are making it out to be. Like if you're a small business, SEO is really important. But if you're an application, your URL is the important thing. So if you can be getting people to go to whatever.app, that's way more important than making sure your blog post 3 pages down is always linked.
Yeah, I also totally agree with that. It depends on what you use is for that kind of app, right? If it's like really like an app that you would run in your browser, or what you want to run multi-platform, then I think it totally makes sense to think about using Flutter. But if you still want to do something like which involves also a lot of text and all stuff like that it needs to be indexed, I don't think that it's quite ready yet. But yeah. I think we'll get there. Yeah, so I think There's just like some kind of questions even rolling in. So there's um, for Android apps, what is your approach to integrate Flutter UI into a big existing code base? Rewrite from scratch in Dart, or try to reuse the logic and wrap it in the Flutter UI platform channels?
Yeah,
That's a good
one of the
question.
first applications I built was a native application on Android and iOS, and the first thing I did was rebuilt the Flutter UI and communicate through platform channels. It works great. It has a binary messenger. You can do a lot. What's even cool is like if you're using Kotlin on Android, you can actually use Kotlin native and then call into it with FFI. So you can actually take your existing Kotlin code, deploy it as a module in a library, and then import that inside of Flutter and then just call into it just like that. But for me, honestly, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you decompile it into Java, you can literally copy most Dart objects directly from whatever and convert it to Kotlin, and that's really close to Dart. So you can, yeah, there's some really cool things there where you can actually migrate your code really fast. And some things that you don't think about when building on Android is a lot of things that's like very verbose in Java or Kotlin, or maybe not Kotlin as much, but you can do it in just like half as many lines in Dart. And then also like things are just way easier, I think, in a lot of cases. Like with networking, you just do http.get and then like it does everything, versus like, you know, having to set up some different stuff. But yeah, I would say it's up to you. Depends on if you're on a huge team. If you're on a big team, then obviously add to app as the solution, and then you're going to migrate slowly. Otherwise, if it's just yourself, then you could probably knock it out in a week.
I also would add that it really depends on how big your code base is and what kind of app you're dealing with. I can just add from not from like my experience, but maybe you know Pascal well. She's also like a Flutter GDE and has been working on like some agency stuff recently and converting exactly existing Android apps into Flutter, or like bringing iOS and Android apps into the Flutter kind of ecosystem. And he say like for most of the time in his experience, it's way faster to actually rewrite the app in Flutter than dealing with, you know, add to app and all that stuff that you know comes with it. So most of the time, since Flutter also reduces your code to let's say around 20% or something of what you
Yeah,
would have in an Android and iOS, it's most of the time it's faster to just like get started raw and just try using that, and then maybe use the functionality that needs the hardware components and create a channel for that. I think that's still the way to go, to be honest.
yeah,
Yeah, what is your approach for project management, especially having multiple projects? I saw Frederik using Trello. Yeah, I think,
yeah.
yeah, no, you know, I still like to use Trello, but Rody, maybe you want to add something to that. What do you use? How do you organize your projects, or the structure or
Yeah.
the tasks you have to do?
So the way I archive my brain is I use Bear. It's a really cool application that allows you to have one-to-many notes, meaning that you can have a note that it can exist in multiple folders, just by using tags. I think it's really great. I store all of my information there for my ideas, my scratch off terrible ideas, my things I don't want to forget. And so from there, then I generate like MVPs and examples, which I will do GitHub. I like to keep all my project boards. I use Trello for some stuff, but I actually use the repos themselves to have the individual project boards. And I have like one global one on GitHub, so that way, like it's very scoped and I can be like, okay, this project, this is this state at this time. And for me, I like to use that for that. And then also for me, like I use GitHub issues. So if something's high priority, like I use the GitHub mobile app as, which is really nice to be able to like keep track of like, okay, what are the issues that are the most important right now. So that's how I kind of keep and kind of prioritize stuff. But yeah, I would say note taking on Bear is one of my secret weapons. So
Nice. Yeah, I also think it depends on what kind of team you have to manage behind all the stuff, right? And yeah, what other tools you're using, right? I mean, we recently also started using Notion. Probably you know Notion as well. So you can
yep,
basically drop
Notion's
everything
great.
into it and yeah, just organize everything inside one single project. Basically, gets rid of, you know, Trello and all the different channels like Evernote and whatever you used before. So I think it's just like a personal choice as well, and
For
what
sure.
you
Yeah.
and your team members best get along with. So just how you organize yourself best. But I think it's always great to hear what other people are using currently.
By the way, real quick before we move on, I just wanted to, if you're in the video call right now, please put your email down below with your name, and we are going to, after the call is finished, like send out all the, like we'll draw from the prizes and stuff like that. So only people that are on the call itself are eligible for any rewards. So just want to thank everyone for joining so far. But yeah, if you're on the call, we're going to save the chat so we can do the drawing from there. So make sure to just put your name and email. And thank you for registering too. It was awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I think there's one last question,
Cool.
which asks, how do you handle studying Flutter to reach this kind of level you're on? I think it's a
Wait, sorry, say it one more time. Oh, how do you handle studying? Yeah. Ride the wave. I mean, you know, it's I didn't become an expert day one. You know, it's, you know, joining and, you know, having to learn all the wrong ways to do something in Flutter. You know, I, you know, you have to be, I was always learning. I wanted to try to come up with a new exciting thing like almost every day or every week in Flutter. And, you know, it's a challenge that, you know, you're always outdoing yourself. And for me, it was also just kind of like discovering, you know, what I didn't know and that being okay. You know, it's like I jumped into Rust. Like I didn't know Rust. I didn't know how to do FFI. I didn't know how to do WebAssembly. I didn't know how to do VR. And all these things are things I took on because I wanted to learn how to do them. And so, yeah, I would say if there's something you want to learn how to do, just do it. Like, you know, just like find a way, find the resources. If you care enough, you will find, like, you will find the knowledge. You will find people that are doing it. You will find podcasts. You will find documentation. Seek it out, and you'll be surprised at what you can come up with.
Yeah, I can't agree more actually. And I also have to say that if what you've seen, Wiredish and stuff, and Snapfeed, those are actually my first web projects. So I've never written a web project before, so I can just agree with that. And
Yeah,
I think most important is that you have something to work on, that you have some kind of motivation. I'm not talking
yeah,
about like motivation that lasts all week or something, because I don't think this exists, except you have like a real like an idea that you want to push out. But I think also always understand that you will never be the all-knowing expert, you know, because if you once reach
yeah,
this level, you'll never, you know, try to do new things and learn new things, because you will have this kind of feeling of you know, being embarrassed to just go out
yeah,
and maybe type something that is wrong. You know, you never want to get there. It's just like you always want to go out and accept that you maybe be wrong, right? And just like go out, try out new things and learn new stuff. And I think it's also very important. I mean, this is a good, I think, closing thought from the very beginning that we had,
yeah,
because at the beginning we said you always should also try out new things. So not only try to become the very like specialized whatever Flutter dev, but also try out, look around. Maybe there's like even other technologies that are interesting as well, right? So check
yeah.
out new things, and maybe it's something else that gets you interested and gets you hooked. And I think this is the only way to go, to always, you know, keep on trying out new stuff and keep this learner's mentality. That's very important.
Yeah, yeah, always be a learner because I think a mistake a lot of devs make is they stop learning once they get their first job. You know, that's like, oh, well, I learned everything in college to get to this point. I learned the algorithms and now I'm good. And so it's like, yeah, you can make a career only using one technology, and I've met many people that have, but I think if you want to truly excel as a developer and as a human, I think always learning your entire life you'll discover things about yourself you didn't know were possible.
Yeah, and accept that you're probably not the best if you start something new, right? I mean,
Oh, you
we
won't
all
be the best, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean, if you go and start like developing your first, let's say, Node backend and stuff, don't have too high, you know,
Yeah,
out expectation
expectations.
for yourself. But if you really want to do it, you will get there. It's not rocket science, right? Like literally, it's so
Exactly.
there's so much stuff out there in the internet. If you just sit there and do it and learn it, you will get there, you know, eventually.
That's right.
So that's a great
Let's
part
go
about it.
ahead and let's go ahead and real quick before we close up, which we're about to do, let's go ahead and take one more photo. So if you want to go ahead and turn on your video, we'll make sure to get that before we leave. And thank you so much for everybody putting your emails in the chat. Like we said earlier, if in case you missed it, me and Frederick are going to be sending out some promo codes for both Widget Studio and Wiredash. and maybe some other interesting things. So stay tuned. But yeah, we just want to thank you so much for, coming with us today in this meetup. This was really fun for us. I know it was really fun for me, and I'm pretty sure Frederick can say the same. But we're really passionate in the community, and we really enjoyed being able to be a part of it, and just hopefully, we can give you a pathway and a story on how you can also build tools for the community specifically.
Nice. I think that was awesome. Yeah, I can't agree more on what you just said. I think it was great. Yeah, it's like I always just can, say and like confirm what you just said. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I think it was a great evening as well. I really liked also listening to your ideas and your thoughts. I mean, it was also the first time I listened, we didn't rehearse it or anything, so it was super interesting. And yeah, let's see where this goes. And yeah, I'm super excited.
All right, come on, all you shy people, do it. Just turn it on.
Are you taking the picture now?
Yeah, I'm waiting for some of these stragglers. There we go. Come on, a couple more.
I can Photoshop some generic.
Yeah. We will provide a photo for you. So.
And I will choose it. So I think it's better, always better to turn on the camera.
That's right.
Nice.
That's right.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna count down from 7, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you so much, everyone. Yeah, this was a really impactful, and I'm really glad we got to talk so much. And thank you so much for your questions. Of course, as always, you can follow us on Twitter. We both, we'll make sure it's linked and you'll see it on stuff. But we want to say thanks again to Code Magic, because they, they're kind of the reason why this is all possible. And make sure to check them out. They're like one of the only solutions for Flutter that are completely targeted to, allow, releasing from an end-to-end solution. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you guys soon too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.
Yep. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon.